Hello, welcome to Risal Reads. I'm Deja, and today we are going to do another recent reads. I have 6 books to talk about today, and honestly, September was kind of a mixed bag. I had some new favorites, but I also had some that I didn't really like that much, and I actually ended up DNFing like 3 books. So, definitely a very mixed month. But let's go ahead and get into all of the books that I read in September. The first book that I have to talk about is actually Black Sun, and I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 4.5 stars because I did have a little bit of a issue with the pacing, but overall I think that this was definitely a strong story. I read this for a fantasy reading vlog, and this one definitely stood out to me because for one, I feel like the way that the author balanced like the cast of characters was very well done. I wouldn't say that I loved all of them. There's only one of them that I'm just like, I'm not really like quite sure like if I really like this character, but it's not like I absolutely hated her chapters either. I think all of the cast of characters and their perspectives were definitely distinct enough that I didn't get lost in like the different perspectives. And I also just like that they all brought like a different part of the world together. Like they're all kind of against and with each other, and I really like that dynamic. And one reason why I was kind of surprised that I actually liked this that much is because it has two narrative devices that I don't really like. It has a flashbacks and it's kind of like a travel fantasy, but I did not feel bored reading these. I feel like the flashbacks added something to the story, whereas I feel like most flashbacks don't. But I won't go too much in depth about the flashbacks because I think it would be kind of a slight spoiler, and it's kind of what made me really like the character of Serapio. I don't know, I just have a soft place in my heart for Serapio, and I just cannot wait to see like what happens to him in the next one. Also with like the travel fantasy part, like I think that with the flashbacks being included in that and having like intriguing characters and intriguing world, I think I wasn't bored. Like it didn't seem like we were traveling that long, even though it was over the course of like what, like 19 days, I think they said. So I really did enjoy this. It has all of the elements that I love in fantasy with like gods and magical creatures and politics and just like interesting characters, and I just cannot wait to get to the second one. The next one that I have is Death Note number 6, and this one is actually a step up from the last one that I read because when I read Death Note 5, I was just kind of not interested anymore, but I was like, I'm gonna push through because everybody says that it's like better as you keep going. And I have to say, I did like this one a lot better than I did like the last one. I think that like mystery, tense, thriller aspect of it is really like amping up now. As opposed to like the last one, I just felt like it was kind of like a thriller one. And this one, I'm not gonna go like too much in depth about it because it would be kind of a spoiler at this point to like tell you what happens in book 6 of the series. But I like that like the chase was a big part of this one again, as opposed to like it was slowing down in like the last books because of something that happened. So definitely like this one a lot better, and I gave it 4 stars. The next one that I have is one that I did not like that much, and I actually got an arc of this book, so thank you to the author for providing that. But this book is Heed, and I did not like this. I was intrigued enough to continue going on in this book because like the writing is very simple and easy to get into, but I think the actual story definitely needed more work. So you're following this character named Cameron that is in a university, and she's an artist. It becomes known to her that she's one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and she's basically the one that's going to start it. And of course she doesn't want to bring like the end of the world, so she's kind of trying to like stop that. Based on like that summary, I thought that I would love this, and I did not, because I don't think that's the story that we actually got. I think that this story really focused more on like the relationships and like the friendships that Cameron had with people, and like the immortal 4 horsemen of the apocalypse kind of thing was like more in the background. There was a lot of things put into the story, but I don't think none of it was really developed enough. if the story would have leaned more into like the Four Horsemen part, then I think I would have liked this more. But it really does spend a lot of the book focused on the terrible relationships that they have and really like building up like to how they can like even use their powers. So I felt like there was like pacing issues. All of that to say, I think that the story was just very underdeveloped. I think I needed more of like the friendship aspects. Not necessarily they had to be like good friends, but I think those relationships needed to be developed more. I think that the main character's voice needed to be developed more. I think the pacing was also off because the author didn't really know what kind of story this was. Like it really was not a like fantasy story. Like I don't think there was a lot of fantasy elements until like the end when all of this like action is happening. And at that point, like there wasn't a lot of like build up towards this ending. And so like I just found myself not caring. And yeah, there's like a myriad of problems that I had with this book, but I'm gonna keep it short. But yeah, I gave this book 2 stars. The next one that I read is Veiled Threats, and this is just a prequel novella that I ended up getting for free at some point, and I actually did like this. In this story, you are following this couple that is trying to find this missing girl, who is actually a elf. I want to say, I think she's an elf, or I don't know, she's some kind of magical creature, and the police aren't doing anything about it. So they bring in this couple that specializes in like mysteries with paranormal creatures, and it goes on from there. And it was very short, but it was still like a very enjoyable read. Like I think that when you're writing prequels, that this actually was a good prequel. I felt like this was a very like complete story. I got connected to like the characters, and yeah, I am actually very intrigued to read more by this author. And it's crazy to me too, because like I'm not a huge mystery person, and I don't really like paranormal, cozy, like mystery things like that either. And I wouldn't necessarily say that this is cozy, but like it just gave me kind of like a light-hearted, like mystery vibe with like fantasy creatures. And I think that the author did it very well. So if you want to try it out, I would definitely recommend. And yeah, I am probably going to try more by this author. The next book that I read is The Boxcar Children, and this one was a reread for me. I put this on my TBR because it fit one of the prompts for the Read Your Library readathon. I think it was Books with Atia that created that one. And I liked it, but like I feel like it's definitely very dated. Like I remember liking this story as a kid, but now that I'm an adult, of course I'm not really like enjoying it as much. They definitely fall into like the gender roles of the time that this was published. And for lack of like a better way to describe it, it gives me like the Make America Great Again Trump era like vibe that people try to recreate. And yeah, I was just not a fan of that. So, like, it was a fine book, but I'm definitely not continuing on to the rest of the series. And then the last book that I have to talk about is A Dowry of Blood, and this was my only 5 star for the month. Like, I was reading this book, and I was up at like 3 a.m. just like thinking about just reading this book. Like, people praise this book for like the writing and just the way that it explores like relationships and things. And honestly, I completely agree with those like assessments. I was really pulled in by just like that first chapter. Like I was immediately like pulled in with the way that this woman was telling this story, and it really got me into like the Interview with the Vampire vibes, the TV show, because I watched that last month as well, and I haven't really been finding books that gave me those same vibes, but this book definitely gave me that. Like you have this like powerful vampire that kind of like seduces and manipulates all of these like people that to bring them into like his like fold or whatever. And in this book's case, like he takes them as wives or husbands. And I really liked the polyamorous vibe of this, and I really liked the way that it explored like just like abuse in terms of like relationships. And I don't know, like this book like pulled like on my heartstrings in a way that like, oh my gosh, like that's what really had me like up at night. I think that the way that the author describes like all of the settings and the slow manipulation that she was falling under. But I was obsessed with this book. I'm still thinking about this book, and I just really loved it. I honestly just like really want to reread it and just be in like the darker vampire vibes, because that is what this book gave me. It gave me those dark vampire vibes that I really wanted. And yeah, I love this book. But that wraps up this video. Like I said in the beginning, like I definitely had a very mixed month. I found some new favorites, and it's very interesting that it was at the very beginning of the month that I found a favorite and the very end of the month, and everything in between was just okay or just not good at all. I kind of like that it wrapped up in like a perfect little bow for the end of the month. Let me know how your September reading went. I would definitely love to know if it was as good as mine, maybe even better, because that is definitely possible. And if you don't want to leave a comment like that, you can also just leave a, let's do like a vampire emoji, something like, I don't know, something that reminds you of vampires. And yeah, I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.